You can't tax your way into prosperity. And not everyone is equal. I don't know why socialists will never learn that lesson. Joining me now, Mick Mulvaney, former OMB director, former acting White House chief of staff, and Steve Moore, FreedomWorks, and the Committee to Unleash Prosperity and all things that are good in the world. Two dear friends. You know, Mick, I know socialists will never understand this, but we are not all equal. As I said, when I was a kid, I wanted to win Wimbledon. Trouble is, there are about 1 million tennis players in the world better than me. We're not all the same height. We're not all the same weight. But here's the thing, and Dana Perino really nailed it. That doesn't mean I should punish you for your success, Mick Mulvaney, but that's just what this budget is doing.
Yeah, Larry, you mentioned, by the way, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Great to be here with Steve, too. You mentioned something in an earlier segment that caught my attention, which is the number of times they use the word equity in the budget. I know it's not really numbers, but it's again, this is a messaging document more than it is an economic document. That word is really dangerous. It just is, because it has no definition. We know what equality means, and that's what this country was founded on. Equity is one of those things that is sort of different things to different people, and it gives the people in charge the permission to pretty much do whatever they want. That's one of those things that really frightens me about this document, is that they're trying to replace equality with equity, and I don't know what that means, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, Steve Moore, stay with this, because their tax policy is aimed at this amorphous notion of equity. We should all, we all have to pay our fair share. I don't know what that means either. But if you make more money, look, I know you're making much more money than I'm making, Steve Moore, but I don't want to punish you with the tax code. I mean, Mick Mulvaney's probably making a fortune. He's a former budget director and chief of staff. The opportunities are endless. But I still don't want to punish you because you might form a company and create a job. You see what I'm saying? I mean, this is such a woke socialist budget. And Mick is right. These definitions of equity are wide open. They'll use it for any justification at all.
Well, first of all, Mick Mulvaney wrote great budgets, as you know, Larry, for President Trump. And you guys really aimed at getting rid of a lot of the waste and inefficiency and duplication in the budget. So I want to salute you guys. Now, I know those were dead on arrival when they got to Congress, because Congress doesn't want to cut spending. But this is $6 trillion. Larry, when you were working for Ronald Reagan in the early 1980s, the budget was like $500 billion. Yeah. Think about that. We've got from $500 billion to $6 trillion. This is the sort of point of my book, by the way, which is in paperback because it never went into hardback, unlike Dana's book. I want to make one other quick point about something that Mick Mulvaney just said about the equity issue. The other issue that is just a current throughout that document, climate change, climate change, climate change. Yep. And here's a statistic from my buddy Casey Mulligan. 1 million people over the last 20 years, 1 million Americans have died from the opioid epidemic and crisis and drug overdoses. You know how many people over the last 20 years have died from climate change? 0. And yet, as Casey points out, they spent 6 pages in the budget on climate change and 1 paragraph on the drug overdose problem. No, that does reflect their values.
That's another good point. We're going to have Bjorn Lomborg on the show, I don't know, tomorrow or Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, the climate change thing is off the charts, and they've spent $5 trillion, and we got nothing for it anyway. But, Mick, the other point is, you're not going to cut the deficit, Mick, unless you grow the economy. These guys don't want to grow the economy. Prosperity and growth are not in their vocabulary. Equity is, prosperity and growth is not. Woke is, climate change is. Their own estimates, in the out years, the last 7, 8 years, 2% growth, just like the stagnation of the Obama years. And 36 tax hikes. I mean, how's that consistent with growth?
It's not. I remember when I was in the state legislature and we were debating a Democrat proposal to raise taxes on tobacco. And I said, why are you doing this? And they said, well, because we want less smoking. I said, that makes sense. You referred to Art Laffer's famous comments about if you want less of something, tax it. When you tax wealth creation more, you get less wealth creation, which is something that benefits everybody. We can't have the type of stagnation. By the way, that is implicit in this document. You make an excellent point. Listen, again, these are messaging documents. They're not pieces of legislation. They're not very valuable as economic documents. But it really is interesting to see some of the assumptions. And when you go in and see what this administration is saying growth will look like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years out, it's 2% again, the same thing that Obama had in his budgets. not the 3% that we had in our budgets. It's a depressing, pessimistic view of the future of this country. And that's, I think, the message that needs to get out about this budget. This is not an uplifting budget. It's not a budget.
By the way,
it's shared prosperity. It's a negative budget.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
And Mick, as you know, because you've written those budgets, you at 2% growth, Larry, you can't balance the budget.
No, you're going to lose
you need
ground.
4%
no,
growth.
you're going to lose because, first of all,
exactly.
It's a very neat trick. This is a deficit reduction budget. The deficit comes down this year as the emergency spending runs off, and of course Trump's V-shaped recovery continues. But then the deficit goes back up. All right, and as a share of GDP, it goes back up. But I'm just saying, on this point, the themes of this, besides woke equity and climate change, those are the two things. And the flip side of climate change is we hate fossil fuels. We hate fossil fuels. They have no plan to replace fossil fuels. I say this to both of you. They have no alternative plan to replace fossil fuels, to replace the electricity grid, to replace the power base in this country with renewables that are, 5%. They have no plan. It is sheer, it's the existential abyss is what it is.
Yeah. Larry, there was there was one other lie in this budget that was repeated over and over again in all the newspapers. Biden said it in his press conference, which is rich people are paying an 8% tax rate. Show me a millionaire or billionaire who's paying 8%. I looked at the statistics today. I looked them up in the budget. I looked at the Tax Foundation data. When you look at our tax system, it is no country in the world depends on the top 1% to pay the bills more than the United States does. It's a highly progressive tax system already. The idea, they're not taking into account the corporate tax, which is obviously paid by the owners of the companies. I estimate that the average rate of tax by millionaires and billionaires is closer to 25%, not 8%.
Mick Mulvaney, I'm inviting you. We are going to put together a balanced budget exercise. It's not unlike the last couple of Trump budgets. Russ Vogt's going to help. Steve's going to help. We're going to do it through AFPI. Brookie's going to help, and we want you to help too, because we're going to show them that this can be done. You're going to have to make some choices, and you're going to have to cut some domestic spending, and you're going to have to grow the economy at 3 or 4%. But it's all doable. Growth, growth, growth. Not
Larry,
in their lexicon.
Let's get your predecessor, Gary Cohn, who's watching this today, involved in that, because, as you know, he's heavily involved in the tax changes that led to that growth. So, we got a good team. We could put it together. Sounds like a fun project.
Gary Cohn's a good tax cutter. We'll get him involved in any darn thing he wants. Anyway, Mick Mulvaney, thank you. And Steve Moore, thank you. And Gary Cohn, thank you very much.